Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is in the spotlight, and it is not about the war that he's currently waging in the Gaza Strip or Lebanon or in Syria that we're talking about. This has got to do with the serious charges of corruption that he currently faces, and he's on trial for it. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in court earlier in the day to testify for the very first time in his corruption case. Now, Netanyahu is in fact the first sitting Prime Minister of the State of Israel to take the stand as a criminal defendant in a case of serious corruption. Netanyahu faces charges of bribery, fraud and breach of public trust in 3 separate cases. Now, at the hearing, the Israeli Premier will have to respond to the allegations and the testimonies that have been made against him, including from former close aides of his. Now, he's repeatedly sought to try and delay his own testimony in the court, but there was no further chance of him delaying his testimony. And the last time he had to physically appear in the court was in June 2023. However, ahead of the trial, Netanyahu at a press conference said that he was actually not running away from law, but he will speak the truth in the court. And he also said that it's been 8 years that he's been waiting for this day to present his side of the truth in the case of fraud that he faces. Now, the trial has been moved from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv for security reasons, where Netanyahu will testify in an underground chamber. So what is this case about? Now, in the first case, Netanyahu and his wife Sarah Netanyahu are accused of accepting more than $260,000 worth of luxury goods, stuff such as cigars, jewelry and champagne from billionaire donors in exchange for political favors. Now, the second case involves alleged attempts by the Prime Minister to reach a deal with a publisher of a very popular Israeli newspaper for better coverage by agreeing to weaken the status of a rival daily newspaper. Now, the third case alleges that Netanyahu had received some favorable coverage on a popular news website owned by his close friend in exchange for smoothing the way out for a telecoms merger that was sought by him. Now, hundreds of protesters and onlookers gathered outside of the Tel Aviv courthouse where Netanyahu took the witness stand. Many chanted for Netanyahu to be brought to justice. But there were also his supporters who called the allegations as completely false and politically motivated.
We are here today to support the judicial system, the trial that is being conducted against a dictator in the making, against a prime minister who sacrifices hostages, a prime minister who has taken us all hostage for his own personal interest, and is trying to harm Israeli democracy in order to continue his rule.
These false allegations were the basis on which the left has expected to remove Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and remove the right from power.
And our correspondent from the State of Israel, Jody Cohen, has sent us this report from Tel Aviv. Listen in.
I'm outside the courthouse where supporters and opponents of the Prime Minister have come to express their views. Before Prime Minister Netanyahu's appearance in court, he suggested that political opponents had concocted a crime, threatened people around him to give false testimony, and called the accusations against him ridiculous. Giving the opening address, Netanyahu's defense attorney suggested there were many holes in the cases against the Prime Minister. For example, he suggested that other politicians seek positive media coverage but aren't accused of committing a crime. Netanyahu is expected to be in court 3 days a week for 6 hours a day until the end of December. The court has suggested they could call a recess if matters arise for the Prime Minister to deal with. In fact, that's already happened, and it's likely to happen more with the ongoing war, negotiations for a hostage release deal and unrest in Syria. In coordination with UN forces in the buffer zone, Israel says it's temporarily moved onto the Syrian side of the zone. And in coordination with the US, Israel says it's been striking chemical weapons in Syria to prevent them falling into hostile hands. This is Jody Cohen for WION World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment with respect to these very serious charges of corruption that Netanyahu currently faces. We are joined by Dr. Avner Cohen. He's joining us live from Monterey, California. He's a professor of non-profit life Russian and also terrorism studies at the Middlebury Institute. And he's also a West Asia analyst. Professor Cohen, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. And let me in fact start off by asking you this. Is this the moment of truth for Benjamin Netanyahu? He tried to kick the can further down the road over and over again, but now he's standing trial on 3 separate cases, many of which his critics say are very serious charges. So a lot of people are saying that the reason why he's not striking a deal to bring back the hostages home and end the war on the Gaza Strip is because he just wants to kick the can further down and escape from this trial. What's your reading on this?
Well, this trial has been torn the spirit of Israel for many, many years. It was behind the effort to overhaul the judicial system as a whole, which led ultimately to October 7th events and what followed after that. It's already 5 years. The investigation started some 8 years ago. The Israeli society is divided on this issue, and it's very, very unique in the sense that it's the first time that Prime Minister in office still facing that kind of trial. Nobody, and I'm a former Israeli, and I grew up in Israel. I follow the Israeli society very, very closely. Nobody on this issue can be completely unbiased, and of course, I'm to some degree biased. Mm-hmm. I think it's a case that the Prime Minister should have been faced as a citizen, not as a Prime Minister, and he's pushing the country down while he's trying to save himself during that trial. It led to the October 7th, and it led to all what came after that.
Right. Now, Netanyahu is, of course, the longest-serving prime minister in the Israeli history. He is, of course, a political survivor. But the allegations are pretty straightforward. They say that he and his wife, Sarah Netanyahu, have actually accepted bribes to the tune of about $260,000. And if the prosecution can actually show that flow of money, the money trail, then it'll be a fairly straightforward case. Do you think Netanyahu can survive this?
It's very difficult to say. It's very difficult to say because there has been an assault on the justice system for a long time. As I said, much before the October 7th. Mm-hmm. In fact, the new government, there was 5 election campaigns because of this issue. Ultimately, in the 5th, Netanyahu was able to win. And after that, he started with a completely assault on the same justice system that called him for justice. I should mention that the Attorney General who put the allegations against him, again, fraud, bribery, and breach of interest, yes, it was his own man, it was his own Secretary of the Cabinet that he appointed. And it was with a difficult time that person put the trial. It was not, and he got after a lot of discounts. Mm-hmm. There is no question that the judges themselves are under attack. It's not easy to run that kind of trial. And there is a lot of pressure in the Israeli society, in Israel as a country, to have some kind of plea bargain and to end it. Because the situation is almost lunatic. Right. When the country at war has its prime minister, now he has to testify 3 days a week.
Interesting. It'll be very, very interesting to see as to how this trial unfolds.
It is fascinating and it's remarkable.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Cohen, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.